Silicon Valley is 40 miles long. And so everybody sort of knows everybody else. Your kids go to the same schools, or you enter the same restaurants or the same gyms, and everyone works in software and very well connected and quite open to sharing their ideas and experience with one another for the benefit of someone that's building a new business. And so they created global leaders, and these global leaders spin off new ideas and spin off new businesses, and they help them nurture them through to become the next generation of leader. So there's this virtuous circle in this community where they're sharing all this knowledge and experience together. And in Europe, we don't have that. So in Europe, we've got, I think, great leaders of software companies and lots of experience, but that experience is it's fragmented, it's isolated, it's by geography, distance, culture, language, a whole range of things that mean that we can't put our finger on the individuals that have the experience that we need right now to help us in our business very easily. And so the idea of Boardwave was to create this community where we knew we had a map of all this knowledge and all these people, so we knew where they were, so we could access their brain power to help each other build the next generation of software companies. I think that we've done a reasonable job in the UK over the last 10 years of nurturing the startup community with the Tech City and Silicon Roundabout, or whatever we want to call it in the UK, where government's actually been helping to help get startups started. So if you actually measure the size of the startup economy in the UK, I think it's 900 billion in terms of the value of the aggregate value of the companies in the startup community, versus Germany, where it's 400. I think it's 250 in France and 250 in Netherlands. So we've made a step forwards. We've had some success, but these companies are startups. Have had quite a lot of support, and the challenge we face is we don't do such a good job of supporting them in the next phase of growth as a scale up. To begin to scale the business, a lot of that support falls away. And this founder now sitting all on their own, thought he had these people with him for good, and they're gone, and he's trying to build his business. And actually it takes longer to scale a business in Europe than it does the US. So a good company in the US can scale to $100 million in 12 years. In analysing the data from our members, it takes 13 years to scale to $50 million in Europe. So the velocity is not quite the same trajectory. There's reasons why that is, but we need to help these companies learn from the experiences of their predecessors so that they can scale more rapidly and compete on a level playing field with their American cousins.
And around that time, 2017, you also had another big life-changing experience, I suppose, where sadly you were diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Could you just share with us how you came about knowing this, what led up to that, and what were you feeling at that time?
I'm a runner, so I used to run on Regent's Park on a regular basis. And there came a point when I would run around Regent's Park, and about halfway around near the zoo, my left arm would go rigid, not stiff, as in, stiff that you would expect an arm to get stiff if it's overused, but physically rigid, like a metal rod. And like that is the weirdest thing. So I would stop for a minute or two, and then it would go away, and I'd carry on for a few minutes, and it would happen again. And I'm like, this is the strangest thing. So I went to a shoulder surgeon, and I did shoulder surgery to relieve the problem. The surgery didn't make any difference. I had surgery on my neck because they thought it was referred from a trapped nerve in my spine. That didn't make any difference. And so, I spent 3 or 4 years trying to figure out why my arm was going rigid so I could run on Regent's Park. And eventually someone said, see a neurologist, because it might be that this is your brain playing tricks with you because your joint's been in trauma for so long. It's teaching it the wrong habits and it's behaving abnormally. So talk to a neurologist about how to reconnect your brain with your muscles in that joint properly. And I went there, and he said, within 2 minutes, he said, I know what's wrong with you. You've either got a brain tumor or Parkinson's. So, you said, sadly, I've got Parkinson's, but I'm quite happy I've got Parkinson's, because the alternative was a brain tumor, and that's not a good thing to have. So that diagnosis was a massive, massive shock, of course, at the age I was then, 51, 52. You're not expecting that sort of diagnosis. No, I didn't go into the room thinking that's what I was going to be talking about at all. But it's got some positives to it. I'm a pretty optimistic sort of person, and I think something like this is a wake-up call, which is, probably there's a journey. This disease is a progressive degenerative disease. Okay, so you're going to get worse, and there's no known cure. So on that basis, you don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today. Make sure you make the most of today, because you don't know what's around the corner. And that's true of everybody, but it's particularly true of my health condition. And so it gives you real renewed energy to get on and go and travel the world and do trips and do the hobbies and things that you want to do and spend time with your family, that you, with a renewed sense of energy and speed, if you like, and velocity, doing it now versus later, which is a real positive force, actually, because it gets you out and doing things that you wouldn't otherwise have done. So it's not all downside, but it's definitely a challenge. And one of the challenges with Parkinson's is people don't want to talk about it because it's got a stigma attached to it. So people think when they've got Parkinson's that when people find out, they're going to think they're not capable of doing their job, and they're not going to get promoted, and they might get fired, and la 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 la. There's lots of reasons what people have got a misconception of what this disease is. They think it's an old person's disease where everyone's shaking. And it's many other things than that. It is that, but it is also a suite of 30 different symptoms that you can have any combination of at any point in the journey of this disease. And so it's very misunderstood, but you can continue to operate in the early years, at least, fairly normally, and hold down a job and be successful. And the job at Exact, which was after Iris for 4 years in the Netherlands, I had that disease the whole time and was the best job I had, enjoyed the most, and had a great time with or without Parkinson's. So it's not all doom and gloom.
You've been a great campaigner, Phill, for the actual understanding from society about this disease and some of its origins and consequences, and to normalize that discussion so it becomes less of a stigma. Can you just share with us what you've been doing? What progress do you think has been made in the last few years?
There's two things I've done. One is trying to remove the stigma attached to Parkinson's by talking about it openly and not being vulnerable and being prepared to talk about it to anybody who wants to listen. Because actually, it's just part of life. Many people go to work with chronic diseases that you don't know about and keep to themselves for fear of being prejudiced against. And actually, they're just as capable of coming to work and do the job as anybody else. So we're trying to remove the stigma by just talking about it in the press and in public forums and different venues, to just normalize the conversation people and actually explain the disease so they don't still think it's about old people shaking. And then the second thing I've done since I got back to the UK is get involved with a charity called Cure Parkinson's, whose single goal is to rapidly find a cure for this disease. So they're involved in funding research into curative medicine that's curative. And when I say curative, I mean it's something that will slow, stop, or reverse Parkinson's, which there's been no major advance in treatment for 50 years. So we're making progress now. And actually, there's some hope that there's things on the horizon that will make a difference to people with Parkinson's. Maybe not reverse it, but at least slow it down, or maybe even stop it in years to come. So the work we do there is about raising the funds and raising the awareness of the research that they're doing in order to do more research more quickly